All right, we are moving along. We are at week 4, the first month of TSL Online, and we are coming up with some of the best stuff. In fact, the next couple weeks are going to be dramatic for improving your social connections with people that you've never met. You're going to learn some awesome tools. This is the mechanics of attraction. The anatomy of attraction part 2. Open up that PDF, brand new one for you. Should be on the webpage for you as well. And we're going to learn 4 awesome techniques. That's it. All you will need to know to initiate and engage a conversation with somebody that you've never met and move them in a direction where you're expressing yourself, where you start to take that stuff in the identity workbook, the good stuff, even the bad stuff that you thought was impossible to connect with somebody, and in a matter of implementing them into the social dynamic, the techniques, build the natural social interaction of connection. It's awesome. It's the best stuff out there. Let's get to it. Remember, show up on the calls. If you're not on TSL Online, do yourself a favor, get on TSL Online. If you're working on the Getting Started program, I hope you're getting the most out of it, but this program was meant to be worked directly with me. Take advantage of that. With the TSL alumni, we've built this group over the past 5 years to have a very active group of guys that have been there before. I guarantee you, it doesn't matter what your situation is, they have had the same issues of connection, lack of connection, inability to escalate, lack of experience, yada, 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 and turned themselves into engines of social dynamics. In fact, engines of expressions for themselves. That's what this is about. You being the better man. Let's do it and enjoy the lesson. So check this out, guys. If we can, I would recommend that you mute. We'll take it off mute in a little bit. You know, basically like this will take maybe an hour, maybe less. But here we have the nature of attraction, the mechanic of attraction. Now, what this is basically is we are covering the actual functioning tool, the social dynamic. Now, if you remember that last week we talked about this, there's like the philosophy, there's the idea, there's the phenomenon, there's the principles. Basically, if you put a bunch of people in a room, they're going to start talking to each other. If there's men and women in that room, they're going to start having sex with each other. We are meant to do that. If we take that out of the equation, that we are born to be sexual, we are born to be social, if we somehow forget that, then we make things a lot harder. So again, I hate to say it, with all the awesome, crazy PUA techniques out there, the number one thing is if you're alone with a girl, you know, and presumably if you're a guy, and the more time you spend with that, the more you can start taking advantage of the natural urges to have sex. Okay, so it's already within you. Now, don't get me wrong, there's friend zone stuff. Don't get me wrong, there's all sorts of complications. There's things where like shit doesn't work out. You fucking get shamed and humiliated and then end up crying your heart out on a TSL Online call. But we have to have faith. We were born to be social. We were born to be sexual. That's very, very, very important. So what we're learning here are some mechanical technique tools. If we do not have those mechanical technique tools, then we can still have sex. We can still have a social circle, a group of friends. We can still have a lot of great stuff. These help as an accent towards things, and very useful accent. All right, so here we have mechanics of attraction. In the previous part of the lesson, we learned about the anatomy of the attraction. This is a vital lesson. Go back, learn it, review it. You can listen to the audio. It's hosted on the Amazon and the Dropbox. Many times we jump to the mechanics immediately for the results. So it makes sense. We're like, hey, show me the shit which works. Show me the fucking technique. Cool. I'm down with the technique. I get that. But man, we're TSL. We're a full service program. We work with you. I expect you guys to kind of like get into the way of life process so you can have a good sex life, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, this is a mistake when we jump just to the tools, because the functioning tools of attraction are pointless without knowing how it works or knowing who you are. All right. Theory first gives function meaning. However, the result of function gives theory meaning, philosophy, and a way of life. If that sounds really confusing, basically it's this: like a lot of theory on, seduction or weightlifting or whatever the hell it is. Well, the function of it will give it meaning, you know. But when we have the merging of making something work and knowing it as well, we can actually turn our life into that. So, for instance, if I know how seduction works, if I know the principles of attraction, seduction, interacting with people, connecting, being myself, all that sort of stuff, and I can put it into action and I can actually execute it with the best technique, then I'm going to have a lifestyle. I'm going to have a way of life where I automatically just move in these directions. So that's really, really what we're going for. Now, the goal of this process is to kind of move in, well, there's a couple of these things to move in a certain direction. Now, number one, we need to learn to engage, okay? And we need to know what that means. For instance, I was just with a client. We were at a restaurant. He was talking to a waitress. He's a pretty experienced guy. He's been working with me a long time. He just came out of a relationship. Wants a little bit of a bump to maximize his Austin lifestyleness. And we were talking to a waitress, and he talked to her, and he did well. And I was like, yeah, but she's not yet engaged with you. She is not yet listening to you. So it doesn't matter what technique you do. She's not really paying attention. She's giving you like her superficial self. So you got to get towards that. How do we engage? And so then gave him a few pointers that might help. It's like, be excited by what she talks about. Hopefully it's something that she talks about deep. So ask deep questions, and then show more eye contact, turn towards her, and show that you are truly interested. And that will be the key thing, because you need to be talking to that side. So, number one, what's one of the goals in the process of all attraction and the material that you're going to be learning here is that you've got to engage. You've got to be like talking to them. Okay. If you're entertaining them, if they think you're cool, if they think you're a toy, if you're whatever, man, that's not the same. You've got to be talking to them. You've got to be talking to the part of them that makes decisions, that cares, that has feelings, all that sort of stuff. The idea of attention and qualification. We then have to be social enough to maintain their attention and ultimately see if we are qualified to talk to each other. We're going to get more into qualification next week, but this idea that we engage with somebody and we do all this attraction material is totally misleading uh, concept, because we're not really attracting them. We're getting attention. We're not making their pussy wet. Like, for instance, this chick said that she's really attracted to guys that are educated, right? And then my friend, he kind of chimed in and was like, really? I mean, have you ever been attracted to a guy and thought like you were turned on by where he went to? It's like total like a societal, and this is a very educated guy. This guy's like super educated. Jesus Christ, I am not. But anyway, and she was like, yeah, I never thought about it that way. It's more like I'm turned off when a guy does stupid shit. I was like, ah. And then she said she was attracted to people funny, or that laughed a lot. And I was like, man, this is actually an interesting story. And this is true. I hate it when people say like that laughter or humor is attractive. It's just an attention thing. It does not make a chick's pussy wet. It does not make your dick hard. It makes you more comfortable with somebody. It's not actually attraction, right? So humor gets you more attention, gets you enough attention for people to feel comfortable with you, so that you can see if you guys are qualified to talk to each other. All right. In fact, true story. Let me just tell you about sex and humor. Try this. Next time you're having sex with somebody and you're really turned on, watch a comedy. And when you start laughing and get really, when you find stuff is like really funny, you will not be able to continue to have sex. It will not. It's two different feelings. And so this is where it's like a lot of people in pickup don't make sex the main thing they go for. Somebody needs to mute themselves. This is something which I bring up on every call, and believe me, it's turned into more of a pet peeve at this point. It's like I write on the email, mute your phone. I bring it up every time and get pissed off about it. Mute your phone. Even when it's question and answer time, when one person's talking, do it. It's anyway. The funny thing about this is then I'll get an email going like, dude, every time you say that and people still don't get it. Anyway, um, okay, so the definition, attraction. Let's start by defining what we mean by attraction. Attraction is simply to gain interest. In the realm of social dynamics, in the industry of social dynamics, that's what it means. But when I first started in social dynamics, when I first bought my first product, and when we talk to any other human being out there that's not in the PUA industry, what does attraction mean? It probably means that one's irresistible, one's sexually turned on, people being drawn to us. And in the seduction world, it really means getting attention, compliance, a series of steps, getting reactions. Okay, and so we know how like it can mean a series of steps, like if you're studying some complex system, which in reality everything's based off of mystery method, whether you're a PUA training fan to, I don't know, anybody teaching a structured system, attraction means a series of steps. But to an outsider, when they look at what pickup is doing, it's really just managing reactions. So it's kind of like a weird deal. So there's a bit of a problem in the language, um, when it comes to attraction. What we are trying to go for here is we're trying to learn a structure of just a few things. It's really simple when we get to it. That is basically getting attention from somebody, right? And the overall goal is to gain rapport or gain seduction, which we'll get into in the later lessons, which are fairly easy. And those should be the main centerpieces. Remember, you can transition anything from rapport. You could transition a friendship, a social circle, a girlfriend, whatever, from rapport, from attraction that I don't know, or what the industry says is attraction. It's not the same. But also, if you run into the right situation, you can bypass rapport and go straight to seduction, but that depends on the right situation. So, safer deal to first start out with learning some rapport. So, our goal for this second lesson is basically this: attracting people based on who we are using the tools of attraction. Okay. If we have the right tools, then we can show them our identity, draw the right people to us. If we have shown our identity to somebody and they're not attracted to us, well, there's basically two options. And we actually talked about this in the last lesson, that either we didn't use the right form to assert ourselves, or we were not able to uh, be qualified to talk to them. I'm just going to go ahead and take the initiative since people don't listen and mute all you motherfuckers right now. How about that? So if you do have a question, you wait till the end, which is probably more appropriate anyway. Um, I do like leaving the option out there, but too much feedback. Okay, so let's actually just review that. If something goes wrong, if I go up to a girl and she's hot as fuck and I have the baddest motherfucking game, like dude, nobody can compete with this shit, and she rejects me, there's two options of where I can assess and how and why this didn't happen. Number one, I did not have the right techniques to assert myself. So the bottom line is I didn't know how to assert myself. I'm doing that through techniques, which might be negging, might be teasing, which might be telling a story. Those are all techniques, but that's all an idea to assert myself. So I screwed up on that. But there might also be uh, the other factor, which is that we just weren't qualified to talk to each other. So check this out. Here's that scenario. I fucking think this chick is awesome. She fits through all of my qualification stuff. Like to me, she is the most awesome of awesome. She is just like fucking badass. But somehow in all of that, I was not what she wanted. Man, that sucks. I failed. I am rejected, you know, and I was not qualified to talk to her. But I did everything I could. I did everything right. I showed who I was, but I was not qualified to talk to her. All right. Now, also, check out what the other deal is. There could be those times where I talk to her and I think she's hot and she thinks I'm hot, but the more I get to know her, I'm like, what a fucking idiot. And she's not qualified to talk to me. What the problem is we start to see social dynamics as this idea that I can have the power to decide and not have any failure or whatever and never mess up, and I can be in the driver's seat. That's not how it works. We're human beings. We get rejected. It can suck. Oh well. All right. So attraction also has this quality where we gain momentum. All right. Everything that you're going to see. And again, there really isn't an attraction game. There's a seduction game. So there's no real attraction game. It's more of a seduction game. And in seduction, we see this rhythm of push-pull, back and forth, highs and lows, things building and gaining momentum. When attraction happens, it's that same thing. We don't just get it and then we're done with it. One of the biggest problems is we see it as a phase, or in a lot of systems, it's seen as a phase. No, it's not a phase. It's always happening. It's a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon of seduction. It needs to gain momentum. We need to constantly gain interest. Then interest needs to be alleviated so that she can have the choice to decide if she likes that interest. And then we might need to gain more interest or challenge or whatever. All right, so a few things to keep in mind here when learning more about attraction. There are a few things to keep in mind. Attraction is a very natural phenomenon, mostly yielding positive experiences, yet there are a few things that can put attraction in the negative. These are consistent. They're not up for argument with me. Or if you want to, we can, and I can give you a bunch of examples of why they're bad. If you do not serve your own identity, it will make your experiences in attracting people in intimate situations negative. If you try and control it, meaning that you think that you have some technique that is going to bypass attraction, you are going to be taken out of the human experience, which is dependent upon choice and it being in real time and people liking you for you. If you think you can control it, you're going to be miserable. Might work for you a few times, but when it doesn't work, you're going to drive yourself mad. If you take on the idea that, hey, people have a choice and things could go good, things could go bad, you're going to find out that when people do like you, it's going to feel good. When they don't like you, you can go, oh, well, shit, I got to accept it. It hurts, but I'm not afraid of that. I'm willing to experience, and it will ultimately make you have better experiences with people. And also, partaking in actions or situations that's not what you want. So many times in pickup, what makes it miserable is when we try and implement attraction in a type of area that we don't want. So, like, let's say if we're not a club person, and because Mystery and Style said go to a club, we went to a club and did all this club stuff, and we got even good with club women. It's going to make it a negative experience. All right, and we have like a few examples of that. Adaptability. Remember that TSL Online is a principle-based program. What that means is that everything's customizable. It's made to do that. It's made so that to serve your identity. Sadly, it's the only program that does that. And what I mean, well, whatever, you guys know. Truly, like serve who you are. Everything needs to be adapted to you and your lifestyle, your motive, your situation, what you're good at, your desires, what you're attracted to, all that sort of shit. In the techniques below, you need to get involved in the way TSL kind of coaches, which is personally show up on the calls, ask questions, try it out with people, try it out with strangers, try it out with hot chicks, try it out with people you're not attracted to, try it out with some random person standing there.
But do that and bring feedback to the calls, the forum. There's plenty of outlets. Like I said in the beginning of this call, like, man, I can't field like personal calls anymore unless you guys are actually designated and hiring time for that. But man, for TSL Online alone, there are 6 hours of calls. One of them is not recorded, so you can really ask whatever the fuck you want. There's also a Facebook group that's really active and a forum. There's plenty of venues where you can like put that out there, but you need to interact. And the reason why you need to interact is because that's what makes it customizable. If you want to get the true expression of yourself, bring it up. And I guarantee you there's an alumni who has walked in your shoes. If you don't understand something I'm saying, I guarantee you there's an alumni that can make it possible to understand. This is actually an interesting thing. There was a dude on Wednesday's call who, when I was on the phone on the call, he started asking one of the guests, or Chris, the who was used to work with me. It's a female who's done a lot of work with me, how he could hire her, how he could get her, like during the call. She's on the fucking call. And he's like bombarding her for like, right now, talk to me. There's no reason for that. Interact on the call. The reason why you interact on the call is because other people can help you. And the reason why he may not be getting that help is because he's not interacting with people on the call. He's trying to bring it back to isolation, bring it back to, and yeah, it can be tough. You might not feel open to talk to people, but it's also why we have a call. It's not recorded. That's also why on the forum, you can message somebody. On Facebook, you can message somebody. Anyway, whatever. Interact. It's fundamental. Put it into action. Bring it back to the group. Work it out. All right, so check this out. The mechanics of attraction, guess what? In our complex, crazy, outlined years of evolution in pickup, sex, me doing it, my clients doing it, guess what? There are only 4 mechanics of attraction. It is the ability to engage. This could also be called opening, but I don't want to leave it as opening because sometimes a situation happens, whatever. We need to initiate conversation and talk to their identity. We need the skill set to talk to somebody face to face for real. Okay? So not entertain, not open about something that has no meaning to us, but actually engage with somebody. That's the mechanic 1 that we're going to first cover. Number 2 is bait. Okay, this is actually very, we hear about bait and pickup. In fact, we don't hear about it a lot when it comes to the outline of like a specific attraction tool, like getting reactions and whatever. But bait is some badass shit. Why? Because it's very consistent. All right, we'll learn about that. And you can adapt it to yourself. For instance, I can throw out some bait. And when I throw out some bait, I can kind of like guess what direction the bait's going to pull back in, and it's very easy to insert parts of myself in that. Teasing, age-old thing. Everybody knows teasing. Teasing and negging, 2 very different things, but very similar at the same time. Why they're different is negging is more like you're kind of busting on somebody. It's more about cutting down value and that sort of thing. Teasing is more like you're joking with somebody. How about that? In any case, then we also have conversation. Okay. So these are all the 4 things. Like when you first get to know somebody, this will help you get to rapport and transition towards seduction. It's very clear what our goal is. Try and get to some rapport, see how they're qualified. If they're qualified to be, somebody that is somebody we might want to have sex with, we go in that seduction route. If there's somebody that we want as our friend, we go in that route. All right, so engaging. Engaging is opening someone, getting their attention, and asserting yourself all in one. It might seem hard to do at first, but you will need to approach somebody. You will need to get them to listen to you, and you will need to express yourself. May sound very basic, but that's all I'm asking here, and clearly that's what I'm asking. When let's say if we are working in field together and you go up to somebody and you talk about some shit which isn't you, and you entertain them and they high five you and they laugh and they flirt with you for a little bit, but you weren't really being yourself, you weren't really expressing yourself, they were only reacting to you, they weren't really listening to you, they didn't want to talk to you, they didn't want to talk to the deeper side of you, you actually failed at engagement. You just opened. So you will need to learn to approach somebody. You'll need to get them to listen to you, and you'll need to express yourself. Okay. All right. 3 ways to engage: ask a question, make a statement, or be a part of a situation. Asking a question, the age-old opinion openers. And there's some great examples here. We do them based on our identity. It's very important. Um, Broken down step by step. So not a bad template to look at. But we ask a question, hey, what do you think about tattoos on girls? Whatever the fuck it is. But we want to do something which is more based on ourselves rather than in a book. And we could say, like, hey, I got a question about attraction. It's actually so I was telling my buddy who we were talking to this waitress, man, she was 18 and had massive boobs and was like, I was sure they were fake. And it was kind of our goal to find out if they were fake or real. And goddamn, they were real. I could not believe it. But hey, that's the great thing about 18-year-olds. They're like, so their bodies are just too hot. I just wish they had sex better. In any case, the thing is that uh, he was talking to her and she was being nice, but he wasn't engaging. I was like, man, you've got to engage. You've got to find out something personal about her and react to it. Like, you've got to be interested and don't fake it. Really go for it. So basically, I said, hey, you're 18. How long have you been working here? And she was like, man, I just started like 2 days ago. I've only done 2 days of real shifts. And I said, well, so what do you do other than that? Like, and actually, let me ask you this, like, what would be your ideal job and career? And she said that she wanted to run uh, a, a daycares. Um, so anyway, I said, really? Why? Did you have like younger brothers and sisters and stuff like that? And she's like, no, I actually work as a nanny. I'm like, man, that's cool, man. This adds like a totally new dimension to you. I can't believe it. This is so like amazing. Like, you work here and all that sort of stuff. So actually, let me ask you this. Like, I mean, we're guys, you're a girl. This is like a hot chick restaurant. You're hot and you're like well endowed hot. You have like, you know, it, but you deal with men who are like hitting on you for all this sort of stuff. But what's the difference with a guy who really likes you and you really like him, and then some guy that's like inappropriate? What is that? And anyway, so quickly get on towards those things. Get on towards those topics. But the key is that I did need to engage her first. She needed to be listening to me. That was very important. Okay. Because she was talking to us, she was being nice before, but she was detached, right? And so I needed to talk to the real her, which was basically ask her a little bit about herself and get excited about something. That would be the step-by-step pattern and technique I did it in. If you do that to everybody, you're not going to be having a human experience. But hey, I really wanted to know. In any case, um, we want to think about that. Like, how can we engage? How can we engage through a situation, asking a question, all that sort of stuff? Um, Wow. Okay. Well, there's actually more examples in the PDF, which I have not yet emailed out to you guys. But in this presentation, the notes, which I'll email that to you too, um, there's less examples. All right. Bait. This is actually my most favorite one. And well, let's get done with this presentation, then we'll open up for questions, and I can help you out more with like personalizing the engagement or personalizing the bait and all that sort of stuff. But when it comes down to bait, this is one of my favorites because it's like really simple. All right. There's basically 2 forms of bait. One, and there's many forms of bait, but there's 2 that we really highlight in this because they're easy to get right away. The first one is being vague, and the second one is asking and denying. Being vague is something that I naturally do in my conversation. I'm such a talky person. My girlfriend is always pissed off at me, and she's like, man, you just fucking like talk and talk and talk. And it's like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck are you saying? And then all of a sudden you get to a point. And what's interesting with that is this was pointed out to me a long time ago in like 2006, no, 2007. I was working with these guys and they said, "Man, you do something that Juggler brings up and it's crazy. I can't believe it." And I was kind of insulted because me being at the time a mystery method instructor, what? I'm like, Juggler? Anyway, they explained it to me and I was like, I do that. They're like, you talk about things and just maybe it's your personality or whatever, and it is my personality. And they're like, man, you wind things around. Nobody knows what you're talking about, but they can tell it's important. You're like engaging enough at the same time. So it's like they're following you, and that whole time you're building an investment. And then you switch to this big, crazy thing, and it all wraps into place. So I thought about that, and I was like, man, I could actually structure this. So when I wanted to talk about sex, because I knew I wanted to talk about sex, I was always a pretty sexual person. It's like clearly a big motive of mine. A lot of people say it's a motive, but with me, it's like I want to tell perverted jokes. Come on, man. Like, how can I talk about this better? So I realized, in fact, I did it with that chick I was talking to just a little while ago. Um, but I knew I needed to talk about sex. I knew I needed to talk about how she had sex and how she thought about sex. That was like a big deal. And so when I was first starting out, I was like, man, I could talk about something and not have it make sense. Like I was asking this really deep question that could be about something, in this case, sex, but I couldn't say it. So I just had to like wind around and be polite and then say it. So it'd go kind of something like this, like, hey, I know I just met you, but it's like, man, you are somebody who is, fuck, how do I say this without pissing you off? I mean, Jesus, like it's, all right, I'm kind of a weird guy and, well, I don't want to say I'm weird, but I can be a little bit too blunt at times. Let me just ask you, like, are you somebody that has been in like a really intimate relationship and you know your sexuality? And so through that, I could go from like 0 to 60 really quick in my conversations. The reason why I classify that as bait is the vagueness is what's drawing them in. And in fact, it would actually happen this way where I'd be like, oh man, I got to tell you this, but how do I say it? It's just like so, oh, I don't want to piss you off. I've been talking to you for like 30 seconds, but, and then they just start saying, tell me, tell me, tell me. So clearly bait, I was reeling them in. I put something out there to stimulate them to come in, and then I could hit with a bigger thing. Well, it's about sexuality and like, are you okay with, like, guys are always concerned about their penises. Like, are you concerned about your vagina? Like, seriously. And so I could jump to that really quickly. All right. Now, it doesn't need to just be about sex. It can be about anything. If you're afraid to talk about, your passion, stuff which gives you real meaning, like who you are, your perspectives, if you feel uncomfortable about that, or maybe you're into something that is like, not as popular, maybe you're into um, some politically charged thing, you can use the vagueness to be there. You could be like, man, you seem like a cool person. I don't want to make you mad, but I prefer to talk to somebody face to face, but this may actually, you may not like this. I'll forget it. I don't know. Oh, tell me, tell me, tell me. Well, look, I grew up really racist, and I know a lot of people don't agree with it, but man, for me, it was hard for me to open up to people with different ethnic backgrounds or whatever. This is like crazy heated stuff. But what I know, and if you go back to the principles of TSL, judgment is not social. If I can get somebody to understand me, they can't judge me. They can make a choice about me, but they can't judge me. And judgment means communication isn't happening. Choice means that communication is happening. We're both agreeing and learning to accept that we may like or dislike each other. Judgment means one party is all of a sudden going, nope, not going to happen. And the other party's like, what? What? So when we're talking about this, you can use being vague into some like real crazy situations. Anyway, I am a sexual dude, but I would like to consider myself not being a racist dude, but whatever. That was just an example. Don't get all crazy. It's just showing you how the awesome social dynamics can work. All right, asking and denying. I actually did a little bit of that just now, but I had to stop myself because I oftentimes mix the two baits together. Asking and denying, well, let me tell you this, is basically bringing something up and then saying, I can't tell you. Okay? So, what I mean by that is I could go up to somebody, try this. Just go around people in the mall or wherever, just say, hey, where are you from? And they say, Nebraska. And you say, forget it, I can't tell you. Be like, what? Tell me, tell me, tell me. Hey, how old are you? I'm 34. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll forget I asked you. I'm sorry. And see what they say. Now, those are like extreme things, but when we actually insert this into the dynamic of who we are, we could say like, hey, I have a question about like intellect and attraction. Actually, forget I brought that up. Or I could even catch myself. I could be like, man, I am so into, hunting and skinning animals or whatever. And the person's just horrified that we're saying that. And so I need to save myself. And I could be like, oh, you know what? Forget I said that. That doesn't have to do with this. Like, man, I was going to talk about some compassion thing, but forget it. And how it transitioned into that, but forget it. And they'll be like, no, 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 tell me, tell me. So asking and denying is key. Where this really came into play with me, again, sexual. Sorry, I'm like so motivated towards that. But I always wanted to know that about people. I'd be like, oh man, I was going to ask you this, but oh, it'll upset you. Forget I said anything. Then they'll say, no, 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 tell me. Well, it has to do with like sex and sexuality. Or I might even insert what we're going towards a little bit later is a tease within that and say like, oh man, forget it. I'm not going to ask you. You would think this is inappropriate. I don't mean it is inappropriate, but you might, I don't know, take it in some like prude girl church thing sort of way. Sorry, I brought it up. And then she'll come back, no, 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 no. But already I'm kind of like seeding it as it might be a little bit racy. With the tease is the church girl type thing. Anyway, here's some examples. Again, in the actual PDF, there are more examples of all this action. All right, check this out. Let's jump to teasing. The old standard for opening, baiting, and teasing, they serve one purpose, and that is to assert yourself enough to transition. So let me just take a step back of what that means. All the stuff you learned, like the engagement, the baiting, the teasing, man, that is only there so that you can transition to rapport. Okay, we talked about that a little bit last week. It's a key. All right. Teasing is so good because it can be like, there's so much that can be inserted in this. All right. And it's very similar to the bait. Like if I want to talk about maturity, I could be like, oh man, I can't talk to you. You are like way too immature. You just make a joke about everything. No, really, 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 really. Are you mature? Like, are you somebody that can really, because man, a lot of people aren't. We can just have fun and talk about stupid shit, but really, if you are mature, we could have like a whole different conversation. That'd be totally cool. But that's not you. Forget it. So this is all really like in that there's a lot of baiting, there's a lot of teasing, and I don't want to make it a big deal. What I want to make a big deal is the idea of the maturity being able to be inserted within there. So we could say like, oh man, let's say again with me it was sex. Like, I can't talk to you. You are so prude. No, really, really, really. If you're not, well, let me ask you this question because, man, we could have an entirely different conversation that could be fulfilling and change your life, but you don't want to change your life because you're worried that a lightning bolt from God might come down if I mention the word sex or, dick or pussy or something, but whatever. You're like conservative, we'll say that. But that dress isn't conservative, but, it's all good. It's all good. I can control myself. I don't need to be like an animal. Anyway, so these are all ways of inserting that sort of like teasing mentality. So a tease is what I'd say for this. The easiest way to get this is like just take the structure of like some typical old school PUA teases like, oh man, I can't talk to you anymore. Or how do you roll with this girl? Or is she always like this? Some simple stuff like that. And then just add the opposite of the value that you're looking for. If that is judgment, which is a common one, everybody likes an open minded girl, a non judgmental girl. You'd say, oh man, I can't talk to you anymore. You are like way too close minded. Oh man, I can't talk to you anymore because you are like probably really judgmental and angry at men. Oh man, I can't talk to you anymore. You are somebody that is just like way too close minded. And then it could even go to like, really? Did you just say that? Did you just say that? Because the tonality in that was something that was like not cool, not like an open minded person would say. And then she'll come back and say, I am the most open. I can't, what? What are you talking about? And then you can move on to an actual conversation or qualification on open mindedness. And it works for literally anything. Like it could be like, well, are you like open minded about sex? Oh man, I can't talk to you. Really? You are so like with your dress, cool. But the way you chose your shoes and your purse to match, you're somebody that like would get all your panties in a bunch over like somebody who's not you and their sexual conduct. Like it would just be like totally fucked up. You have an opinion about it. What? What? Well, you could only have friends. You're one of those girls that can only have friends with like people that like the missionary position or something like that. And then she'll start bouncing back at you. This is more like kind of club bar type talking. And she'll come back at you with some stuff, and then you'd say, no, well, okay, really? Are you open minded? Do you have a liberated mind about sex and sexuality? Because if you do, man, this could be really cool. But whatever, I'm not counting on it. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. So, in any case, this is what's happening with the teasing sequence of it all. Now we get into conversation. So again, remember there's 4 elements that are the mechanics of attraction, the things that we're going to do to generate enough interest to transition to rapport or seduction. Okay? So the 4 things are engaging, getting somebody to pay attention to us, teasing, baiting, and conversation. But let me tell you, you're going to learn to have a motherfucking conversation when it comes to rapport cycling. This is a conversation that's going to set this up. And what I mean by this is that this helped me out so much when I was first starting. So when I first started, I was like listening, basically following the template that we're all familiar with, which is kind of like a mystery method deal. And in that, there wasn't really like a lot of information on comfort. There were games you could play, but there wasn't like a real map for it. It was like, well, move her, isolate her, move her, time bridger, bounce, all this sort of stuff. But there wasn't actual content. And I was like, what the fuck, man? I can only play the whatever truth or dare game or whatever it is so much. But then I started to think like, okay, well, there's DHV stories. DHV stories have these characteristics that are leader of men, protector of loved ones, all this bullshit, right? That have aspects to it. So I'm going to make talking points that have to do with that. And then I realized that I didn't need to hit those quote unquote attraction switches of like, well, leader of men, protector of loved ones, pre-selected by women, all that sort of shit. And I could just do topics which were kind of cool. So what did women like that, were topically cool that had that I liked? I liked art. I liked a lot of movies. I like a lot of culture. I like traveling. So I could actually talk about those. And these would actually come out in my DHV stories, which lasted like a month or so until I figured this out. Which I don't know why other people don't get this. I think they get it once they start getting laid, but I'd meet somebody and be like, oh, what do you think about tattoos on girls? Oh, man, is she always like this? How do you guys roll with this girl? And I'd do all that sort of stuff. And then I'd say, you know what? I want to know something. I love traveling, and it's like one of the most amazing things. And it's really important for me. And so I would just talk about stories about like driving through Mexico or driving through the United States or or traveling to another country or whatever, but that was key to how I interacted with people. So I had these little sound bites that women seemed to like and that expressed me. And it was an important mix, you know? And so I had to kind of like gauge like what did women like talking about? Well, women like talking about relationships, women like talking about uh, things that they're passionate about, things that give them meaning. Women like talking about what is important about them and how they're expressed in a relationship, not just their body. you know um anyway, if you want some select things: art, relationships, travel, passions, being respected as a woman. These are all topics that one could talk about. So if I had a little story and little sound bites that kind of like talked about three or four of those things, it would allow me to have a conversation. All right. So I could have a conversation and just be like, man, this is really random and weird, but I think you're going to understand this. Like, so for all my 20s, like especially my early 20s, I mean, it was fucking crazy. All I did was work as an artist. It's kind of like a thankless job to work as an artist, but that's all I did. I worked in theater. I also, might draw stuff or whatever. But in the meantime, I would like, make money working at restaurants or cafes or whatever, and that sort of thing. But I worked in to express in those sorts of ways. And then I might jump to something like, man, do you know what I mean? Am I totally losing you here or whatever? Well, anyway, if I was losing her and I could see that she wasn't picking up on the art thing, which took me about 15 seconds to kind of express, then I could jump and I'd say, well, it influenced me with like traveling and kind of like how I traveled, because I traveled really light, and it's just kind of how I chose to see the world. And to this day, I still feel that that's important, to really saturate yourself in a city. So I could just jump from soundbite to soundbite. If she didn't get that one, maybe she might not be qualified to talk to me. But then I might say, like, but God, what I realized in traveling was that people can do things different, but man, they also do things the same. Like, for instance, like women and how they express themselves and have relationships, and men. Like if you go through even just different regions of Mexico, men and women have relationships in different ways. And yet we're also caught up in how to control, how we have a relationship. But if we just realize that, God, there's nothing wrong with being a man. There's nothing wrong with being a woman. Why should they be the same? And why do we need them to be the same? Or whatever, so I'm kind of stating an opinion through that, and hopefully that thread hits. But if not, then fuck them. I don't want to talk to them. So, in any case, what's important here is that we realize that these little sound bites of conversation that are windows to our lives, of stuff that we really think, have an opinion about and feel passionate towards, this is really our arsenal. This is all we need. All we need is like, all right, let's think about like two or three teases that can jump back into us. Like, oh man, I can't talk to you. You're the most judgmental person. Wait a minute, did you say that? Like, okay, well, I get your friends here, but you, man, you're like, I don't know, I can't talk to you. I'll say something and like, I feel like, I'm going to get spanked or something at school, or get my favorite toy taken away. It's just totally not cool. You're too prude for me. Okay. So if I have a couple of those, then I have a couple of baits like, oh man, I was going to say something, but it would offend you. So I'm not going to say it now. And then I can say something offensive. Um, if I have a few of those things structured out, it's very helpful for me to lead towards rapport and or seduction, but mainly what's going to happen here is rapport, where then I can start getting into what's called either a qualification pattern or a rapport cycle. They're both the same thing, and move right towards that, which we're going to be talking about in depth next week and the week after that, and even the week after that. In fact, for the entire course, rapport cycling is just such a meat part of the course. So basically the deal is that we want to start using ourselves to kind of get conversations going and moving in the right direction. So it can sound something like, Oh man, well, okay, you've worked here for like 2 days, but you have a perspective on this because you obviously have a different perspective because you work as a nanny and you work with kids, but you're really attractive. And so there's like these different values. Like, when was the last time a guy talked to you in that side that was passionate about what it is you want to do? And then, as she said tonight, you're asking really hard questions. And then I could say, man, let's move to a qualification process, pattern, or rapport cycle. Say, no, really, like what gives you meaning and how you talk to somebody? Like, here's a better question. When was the last time you were insulted by a guy being really into your body? Because you have a hot body. When was the last time that that happened? And I'm starting to qualify towards something. And when she either answers or gets confused or at least engages, at least she's thinking on the same wavelength with me, then I can start going, okay, okay. Well, look, let me explain this. I don't mean to confuse you or ask something too deep here, but really what I'm saying is that what gives me meaning is how somebody interacts with me and how somebody sees me. But if they saw me just as the clothes I wear, the body I have, and all that sort of stuff, which I want to be good, but if they just saw me as that, man, that would be insulting. And so what I'm really asking you is, what's the real beauty that you have? What's the real beauty? And if she can, and remember, when somebody can understand us, they can't judge us. If they can understand us, well, guess what? They're going to start answering questions that are deeper, a lot quicker, and a lot more intimately. And let me tell you this, I want to make friends with, have sex with, interact with, have relationships with people and not facades. So that's what this is all here to help you do.
Man, I love that lesson so much because it is so simple we may not think it will work. But try it. Try it. Go up to somebody and ask them, hey, where are you from? Ah, forget it. I can't ask you. You're probably too judgmental. Actually, well, let me ask you something. Are you an open-minded person? And just move on to a thread that fits right into some of the values that you love. If you like open-mindedness, a lot of people do. But you can do that with any form of theme, ideal, highlight about your life, and with very little creativity, very little technique, make that work and start getting some of the natural connections, what we are born to do, what we are born to do, to be social, to be sexual, and connect with others. Do yourself a favor, allow that to happen. That's what TSL is all about. We have a heavy week of exercises to stay focused on. Remember, do the exercises, show up on the calls, put in the work, you will get the results. This is what TSL Online does. It's the best course for it, and there's nothing else in the world like it. So do yourself a favor and get active on it. Change your life. We'll be there for you.